Good afternoon. We're just going to give a 30-second delay here to allow for everybody to filter in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, good afternoon, and welcome to the S.J. Quinney College of Law. We're really excited to have you here today. Since we can't be in the building, I present to you a beautiful picture of our building. I do think it's one of the great things about the College of Law is our beautiful building. So I'm sorry that you can't see it today, but we're very much hoping that you're going to join us in the fall so you get to see it in person then. My name is Elizabeth Crump Warner, and I have the privilege and honor of being the Dean of the S.J. Quinney College of Law. And I'm really excited to be with you here today to talk with you and provide you a little bit of an insight about our faculty and how our faculty interact with students. Before I introduce our esteemed panel, I do want to just briefly make a couple of announcements. So first I want to let you know that this session is being recorded. It's being recorded so that hopefully we can make it available to individuals who weren't able to attend today. So I did want to let you know that. Also, you might be aware that Professor Kiter is having some difficulties with his volume. So when he speaks up, he's going to try to lean into the computer, but you might want to just pay extra close attention and hang on his every word when he's speaking because of the volume challenges. Professor Schwartz does have to go teach, so he will be leaving us a little bit early. He'll probably have to leave around 1:05, so I'm going to let him start every answer to every question just so we make sure that we get every piece of wisdom that he has to share with us today. And you might see him jump off a little early. And then last but not least, I want to let you know that we're going to use the Q&A function for questions. So if you head to the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a tab that says Q&A. And so type in your question there and I will ask it to our panelists. I'll be your moderator for today. And also there's an ability to kind of vote up. If somebody asks a question that you're really interested in getting the answer to, feel free to move it up to the top and that'll make sure that we get that question asked. So with that, I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists and then I'm just going to say a few things about our faculty and then we'll turn it over to them to talk about their experiences in the classroom. So first I want to introduce Professor Bob Kiter. So Professor Kiter has been with us now for, what is it, about 25 years, Bob?
25, 26, yes.
25 26 years, but who's counting? So he's really an institution. He's a former acting dean of the law school, so he's got great context for kind of the big picture. He also currently directs the Wallace Stegner Center for Environmental Natural Resources Law. So he has some really nice insight both from the big picture as having served as acting dean and then also now being director of the Stegner Center. Also, he teaches constitutional law too. So he has a chance to interact with a lot of our students as they go through that class. So we're really fortunate to have Professor Kiter with us here today. We're also really fortunate to have Professor Schwartz with us here today. Professor Schwartz came to us from, actually both Professor Kiter and Professor Schwartz came to us from another institution. So they have that perspective as well in terms of how the S.J. Quinney College of Law is perhaps a little bit different from other institutions. And so we're really fortunate that Professor Schwartz decided to join us at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. Professor Schwartz teaches in the area of business organizations, but his specialty is secure transactions, and he's really unique and wonderful in the field because he teaches both secure transactions from a private perspective and a public perspective. So he does a really great job of kind of drilling down and showing you the difference in those two areas. He's also one of the founders of our business colloquium, which has been a huge success in terms of bringing in experts in the field of business and commercial law from around the country to the S.J. Quinney College of Law. So he's really brought a lot of specialty to our community as well, so we're excited to have him. Also on the call you'll see is our Dean of Admissions, Reyes Aguilar. Hopefully you've had a chance to meet Dean Aguilar in your interactions. I know he's really super excited to talk to all of you. And so if you want to reach out and have any questions for him, please feel free to do so. We're really blessed to have one of the foremost admissions experts here on our staff at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. So with those brief introductions, I just want to share a couple thoughts about our faculty and classes with you before I turn it over to Professor Schwartz to explain a little bit about his classroom and how he interacts with students. So one of the things that I really want to highlight for you that I think makes the S.J. Quinney College of Law a little different is that we are the smallest top 50 law school. And the reason why I really view that as a strength is because our faculty-student ratio is 4.5 to 1, which means that our faculty really have the opportunity to get to know their students well, to get to advocate for their students, and to get to help their students. And so, for example, in this COVID-19 crisis, we've really seen that advantage come to play, where I'm sure Professor Schwartz and Professor Kiter and Dean Aguilar could all give you examples of where they've been individually working with students to help them navigate this really challenging and difficult time. And that's not unique to this crisis. That happens on a daily basis. Our faculty really care about the students. I know that Professor Schwartz and Professor Kiter can both give you examples of where they personally help students not only in law school, but also after the fact. In fact, both of them are so beloved by their former students that both have had former students make donations in their honor. And so that I think just speaks to how well they are beloved by their students and former students. So that's something I think really sets us apart, is that ability to get to know our students on an individual basis because we are such a small community. And the other thing that's really nice in terms of faculty-student interaction and educational opportunities is because we are situated in the heart of Salt Lake City. We are literally 5 to 10 minutes away from downtown Salt Lake City, which means that you have access to all the top law firms, government organizations, nonprofits, the federal courts, the state legislature, you name it, we got it within short distance. You can even take a free commuter rail back and forth between the law school and downtown. So that really just makes it for a wonderful learning environment. And for those who enjoy the outdoors like I do, again, 5 to 10 minutes, you can be at a trailhead. In fact, both Professor Schwartz and Professor Kiter live in beautiful Immigration Canyon, which is just a great place to be sheltering in place right now because they have all the wonderful outdoor activities. 45 minutes you're in the wilderness. It's just a wonderful place for you to be, both in terms of educational opportunities downtown and then also in terms of mental health and wellness, being so close. And the last thing I mentioned before I'll turn over to Professor Schwartz to share his experiences is that we really are committed to student success. And the way that we demonstrate this, and Dean Aguilar could speak to this, is that we have reduced our student debt load. So the average student debt load for students nowadays is $90,000, which is really high. We are really proud to say that we've reduced the average load to $61,000 at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. And we've made an effort and a commitment to you, and hopefully you have seen that through your scholarship packages, which, by the way, if you haven't seen your scholarship yet, be sure to check your email because that's where it's at. We've made that commitment to give scholarships to hopefully help reduce that load, to help you both in terms of yourself and your family, but also so that you can choose a job and a career based on what you love and not because you feel like you have to repay those loans in a quicker basis. So that's the last thing I say, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Professor Schwartz to explain his experience in the classroom, and then we'll turn it over to Professor Kiter. Professor Schwartz?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Dean Crump. So thank you all very much for joining us. Excited to be here today to speak with you like this. I teach, as the Dean alluded to, I teach the corporate law classes at the law school. So I've taught corporate finance. I've taught business organizations. I teach that almost every year. I also teach 2 securities law classes. So I think we're one of the few law schools in the country that offers both public and a private class in that subject, and because the needs for those companies are very different. So if you're interested in securities law, which is basically the law of investing, the law of taking companies of IPOs and taking companies public, it's the law of protecting investors. Something that's very relevant right now. The SEC is a primary regulator in this area, and they've been very active as the stock market has been up and down. There's reports every day about what they're doing. There's one funny anecdote that Zoom that we're on right now. There's 2 Zooms. There's the Zoom that we're on right now, and for obvious reasons, its stock price is climbing. But there's another company named Zoom that doesn't do anything related to this, and their stock price has also been going up. So it kind of speaks to maybe not the wisdom of crowd so much in the stock market. So the SEC SEC has intervened to stop trading in that stock. So I teach classes all related to those issues. I think one thing that's unique about those classes is that securities law, some people might say, can be a little bit dry. But I think that I try to teach it in a way that is, tries to make it a little less dry. And I try to make it very focused on being practice ready. So we go through, it's not based around cases because so much of securities law is regulation rather than case-based. So we'll go through cases, we'll go through problems, we'll go through examples of what companies have done. So my goal in teaching these classes is to have students prepared to start practicing in a law firm in this subject area and to kind of demystify this area of the law, which is not only very dry, but also very complicated. So I really enjoy working with students in that. And I supervise research assistants who I've written articles with in this topic area. So it's really been great. And I can attest this small student to faculty ratio. My class this semester has 11 students in it, and it has a great feel. Even teaching remotely like this, we're able to kind of maintain that nice classroom atmosphere. So it's a really great place, a warm place to teach. Some other things I've done, just one other thing, and then I'll hand things over, is that from time to time, there's a competition in it's called the Transactional Law Meet, where students compete with teams from other schools in negotiating an M&A contract, so a contract where one company is buying another. And I've worked with teams of students, it's usually 2 to 4 students. We work closely together over the spring semester in negotiating and preparing and drafting documents for this deal and in negotiating that deal against other schools. And my students always say how it's one of the best experiences in law school. And it's great. I learn a lot from it too. And I really think it prepares students well. So I really love teaching here and happy to answer any questions about our corporate law offerings and kind of and the community here. So thank you.
And I'll jump in. Bob Kiter. I'm 26-year veteran now of the faculty at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. Have thoroughly enjoyed my time there and have gotten to know actually 2 generations of students now at this point in time. And look forward to seeing some of you and hopefully most of you come the autumn of 2020. And I'm assuming that we'll be back up and running in person then rather than virtually. But we will cross our fingers on that point. By way of some background, my teaching these days is primarily in the realm of constitutional law and natural resources law. Over the years, I've also taught administrative law, federal courts, supervised a civil clinical program, taught lawyering skills classes, and even legal writing in the distant past. My research activities are primarily in the realm of natural resources, public land law. I've authored or edited 7 books at this point, 5 of them in that area, 2 of them in the realm of constitutional law, my other principal area of research, and have had the opportunity to engage students as research assistants, Bailey Fellows or Quinney Fellows in my research at the College of Law. Most recent articles focus on the question of landscape scale conservation and the proposal to establish a national conservation landscape conservation act at the federal level, as well as a recent detailed examination of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and the role that law and science have played in promoting better management of that area. The other hat that I wear is as director of the Wallace Stegner Center for Land Resources and the Environment. Stegner Center serves as an umbrella at the law school for our academic and student and public programs in the realms of environmental and natural resources law. We offer at the College of Law a certificate where students can essentially major in natural resources or environmental law. There are other certificates also available in select subject areas at the College of Law that you should be aware of. The Stegner Center hosts an annual symposium. We just more or less under these times of sequestering completed our 25th annual symposium, which brings illustrious speakers from around the country to the College of Law to address different topics in this area. Some topics that we've looked at over the years include the Colorado River, national parks, climate change, Endangered Species Act. Most recently, we focused on food and the environment. And that symposium usually is attended by 300-400 individuals, including students, and provides an opportunity to get exposed to people who are quite accomplished in the area of the annual symposium. We also host regularly other public programs, a series of green bags during the semester where we have local and national speakers in to talk about their work for nonprofits or their books or their photography or other activities that they may be involved with. The Stegner Center and the College of Law jointly sponsor several scholarships for students in the area of environmental and natural resources law, including the prestigious O'Hara Fellowship that covers 2 years of tuition and scholarship support, along with a guaranteed 2-year position at the Attorney General's Office for the state of Utah in the Natural Resources Division. In addition, student competitions, moot court competitions, one at Pace Law School in New York, another at West Virginia University Law School. These are national competitions, and we send a student 2 or 3 person team to each of those competitions every year. We've had considerable success and have even won the Best Brief Award a couple of times in the PACE Environmental Law Book Competition, and with some frequency advanced to the final round in that competition. That brings 100 or more law schools together annually in the spring of each year. I probably should mention a couple of professional activities that I've been involved with to give you a sense of the type of things that I'm doing, but also more broadly the type of things that our faculty are involved with. I currently serve and have for the last 20 years on the Board of Trustees for the National Parks Conservation Association, a national environmental organization focused on protecting and supporting America's national parks. I am also on the Board of Trustees for the Rocky Mountain Mineral Law Foundation, a entity based here in the Rocky Mountain region that provides continuing legal education to private and public lawyers involved in natural resources law. Other activities that I've been involved with include chairing the Greater Yellowstone Coalition Board of Trustees and serving on that board, and serving as Associate Director of the University of Utah's Institute for Clean and Secure Energy, and on the board of the Sonoran Institute based out of Tucson, Arizona, all of which provides me an opportunity to get intimately involved with natural resource, environmental type of issues, and helps to keep me abreast of what's happening in the area, and also an opportunity to contribute to the growth of law and policy in those areas. Finally, I've had the opportunity to consult with most of the federal land management agencies here that oversee the federal lands in the American West, and to likewise consult with the nonprofit groups that work there, with state attorney general's offices involved with natural resource issues, and to get involved with the productions made by the public television station here at the university, both on national parks and on wilderness areas. The final point I should make is that through these connections, we've had great success in getting students placed upon graduation and for summer positions, both with private law firms, with the state attorney general's office, with federal agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of the Interior, and solicitors or general counsel offices, and with nonprofit like the Earth Justice organization that litigates environmental issues, Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance, and other types of youth. So there are great opportunities to get engaged in public land, natural resource, and environmental issues at the College of Law. I'm happy to respond and answer specific questions on that. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Great, thank you, Professor Kiter. So now is your turn to ask questions. And so while you're taking some time to type in your questions, there are just a couple things I wanted to follow up on. First, Professor Kiter mentioned, and also Professor Schwartz mentioned, the opportunity to get jobs in their respective fields. And I would just say that globally, that's a wonderful thing that I think we offer is not just jobs, but really career development and working with you to find out what career you want. We have 4 people working in our career development office, which allows us to do really individual work. And we've had such great success that in our numbers that we reported for this past year, which go up until March 15th, so we're just working on reporting those numbers now, all but only 2 students in the graduating class of 2019 found the career that they were looking for. So we've had really great success in terms of career placement. And then the other thing I just wanted to update you on, while you're all hopefully busy thinking of some questions for our panel and typing them into the Q&A box, is to let you know of some things that we're working on globally for the law school. So we have an initiative to work on our national reputation. Hopefully you all saw that. We recently had an increase in our ranking, and that's something that we're going to continue to work on. We think we have a great law school, and we just want to make sure that everybody knows about it. So it's not necessarily changing what we do, just getting the message out. The other thing that we've really been working on is our diversity, equity, inclusion. So we want to make sure that we have a diverse community. That means students, but also faculty and staff. We've had some great success in terms of hiring lately that we're proud of. And then also making sure that we have an inclusive environment. So that means that all perspectives, regardless of where you are, feel heard. And I've heard some of our colleagues, such as Professor Rennell Anderson-Jones, who has taught now at SJ Quinney. This is her 3rd law school. She previously taught at one law school where she felt like the community was overwhelmingly liberal, so she always found herself making the conservative argument. Then she moved to another community where she felt that it was conservative, and she found herself making the liberal argument. And now at the SJ Quinney College of Law, she really feels that in the classroom she gets balance, where the students bring forth both viewpoints, and she really feels that that's beneficial to her students. And I think other faculty feel the same way. So those are 2 things I just wanted to give you an update on that we're working on and that have been priorities for us. And with that, I will go ahead and ask our first question from you.
It's,
okay. Oh,
do you have the question?
I do have the questions.
Okay, great.
So the first question I see here comes from Samantha Meeker. And Samantha asks, when can students begin to apply for research assistant positions? Are the positions filled on a rolling basis, or do they begin at a certain time of the year?
Well, ordinarily, the faculty tends to select research assistants after the conclusion of the 1st year, and hence during the 2nd year and 3rd year, we also have a process for application for Quinney fellowships that the faculty and students are involved with in matching interests, and individual faculty members also have funds available to hire individual research assistants. I think occasionally a 1st-year student might be brought in as a research assistant, but more often than not, it's after a student at least has had a 1 year of exposure to the law, basic legal principles, and basic legal research and writing skills. And from the 2nd year on through the 3rd year, there are those opportunities, along with, I should say, regular opportunities to work with individual faculty members through what's we call directed research, and a number of students take advantage of that and pursue individual research projects that they may be interested in that we don't have a course or seminar that's directly on point. And just about everyone on the faculty is open, receptive, supporting those types of directed research projects.
I'd like to follow up on that answer also with regard to one of my areas of responsibility is the financial aid side of things, and we consider the graduate assistants and research assistantships that students are hired for includes financial aid. In the university for graduate assistants, there's also a tuition benefit program that accompanies the hires. And as Professor Kreider alluded to, the vast majority of those hires and placements occurred this time of year. There's an application process, and we expect to notify the recipients of those placements in the next couple of weeks. But we're also a school that vigorously seeks out grant support and opportunities to support the scholarship of faculty. And there are times during the year where we refer to them as one-offs, where a grant may be funding a professor in the research, and that will include the support of a research assistant. And we notify the candidates of those positions opening as they become available. So the answer is it occurs mostly in the spring of the year preceding the academics of the next year, but then you should also keep an eye out on the emails that go out to students when you're here, because we will often have positions open up fairly quickly. I'll be talking a little bit more about that program in the financial aids panel that will be happening 2 Thursdays from now. I believe it's the 9th. You have mute.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you so much. Okay, so next question we have comes from Paris Wagner. And Paris wants to know, what is the typical class schedule for a first-year student, and when do students select courses? Professor Schwartz, can you take a first stab at this one?
I would actually defer to someone else on this, since I don't teach first-year classes. This would not be something that I would be the best one to answer.
No, answer now. All right, I'll take a first stab at this one, and then maybe others can jump in. So one thing that, regardless of whatever law school you go to, that's going to be similar is going to be the first year schedule. So all first year students will take torts, criminal law, civil procedure, constitutional law, property, contracts, and then a legal writing class. So at the S.J. Quinney College of Law, we call that legal methods. So you're going to see that regardless of what law school you go to. Students get the opportunity to select courses for their second year. So for the first year, you're put into sections, and we try to make sure that the sections are diverse in terms of trying to make sure that we have representation of people from all different parts of the country, all different types of backgrounds, so you can really have that robust conversation that we know you all want to go to law school for. So that's something that we actively look for in creating those sections. One thing that is a little bit different from the S.J. Quinney College of Law versus other law schools, certainly different from my law school experience, is that when I went to law school, we had most of our classes in large sections of 100 people. So very large sections. The only classes that were smaller were legal methods, whereas, and others can correct me, but at the S.J. Quinney College of Law, the largest class you're going to have is going to be less than 50 students. So even the large classes are relatively small in comparison to other law schools. And then you'll also have those small sections where you'll have an even smaller group of students. So this is really beneficial, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, it helps you to get to know your classmates. And two, it really helps you to get to know the faculty member, both so that you can get help if you need it, and so that you can start to develop those great relationships so that faculty can hopefully write you a letter of recommendation at a later date, which will help you get jobs. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to that. Please do.
The only thing I would...
Go ahead, Reyes.
The only thing I would add to that is the classes that you take basically match the hours of credit that you're receiving. So you'll be sitting in class about 15 hours a week. You'll be enrolled for 15 credits in the fall and 15 credits in the spring. You are in class every day. Typically 2 to 3 classes every day, and then the time class ends and the time class will end for your begin and then end in the day will vary depending on the faculty schedule and what the room assignments are. But you can count on being class daily throughout the semester, with the legal research class usually wrapping up a little bit earlier than some of the other programs.
The only other thing that I would add is that although the first year is made up of required classes, once you move beyond the first year, then with a couple of exceptions, professional responsibility and constitutional law, second semester, it's open to students to select their curriculum. If you're interested in a certificate in a particular area of law, and we offer half a dozen different certificates, there are some requirements in order to qualify and graduate with the certificate. But beyond that, there's a great deal of freedom to select your own program geared to your own interests and needs.
All right, so I'm going to combine two questions here, and this time I know that Professor Schwartz can start with these answers. So the first question, and this is a combination of questions asked by Victoria Countryman and then I'm missing who asked the other question, but I remember what it was. So Victoria and somebody else asked these questions of what brought each panelist to the S.J. Quinney College of Law from instead of other law schools. So given that you both taught at other law schools, why did you decide to the S.J. Quinney College of Law? And answering your question, or answering this question, maybe you can also speak to what you think is special or unique about the S.J. Quinney College of Law. So Professor Schwartz?
Sure. So I came to the school from another institution because of the school itself. So I'm from California. I was teaching in California. I had no connection to Utah. So I didn't know what to expect, and so I was attracted to that school as it was joining the faculty here and being part of the U, which is just a great research university. And there's a lot of resources available to faculty that come from working with a school that is as strong as the University of Utah. Lots of interdisciplinary opportunities. The business school here is very strong. We have a JD MBA program, which I'm happy to speak to as well. So the opportunity to work with the business school, to be part of a major university, to work with the students here. I remember when I was being recruited, meeting a few of the students and just really having a good time with the students and kept in touch. One of them actually ended up on the transactional law meet team a year later. We didn't do that well that year. It was the first year, but we won't focus on that. But it was a good experience. So working with the faculty, working with the university, working with the students here, and I have to say that I really love working with the students here. It's a really great school to teach at. So it was really the school, and I didn't really know what to expect from Salt Lake City, but I really love living here. It's a great city, access to the outdoors. The downtown is growing. It's got the capital here. The law firms, the Utah law firms, and other kind of regional and even national firms are based here. So it was a school that brought me here, but I also love being in Salt Lake. So, I mean, what's unique about, I think that answer, I think, touches on what's unique, but I guess to go further, and I guess this is, it goes back to what Dean Crump Warner was saying earlier, but I think really what makes the school unique is its size. Not only we have this small student faculty ratio, so I know, you know the students, you know them well, you have your door open and they stop by and you chat with them. I sometimes I have to work from home because when I come to the office, I'm just talking to students all day, which is a lot of fun, but then I don't get my work done. So just the relationship with students, the open door policy, the student faculty ratio, but also the small size of the faculty. And it's just, it really feels like a community. And I feel like for such a good law school, it's really unique in that, to have that community feel while also having the academic chops that it does. So that's kind of what brought me here and why I think it's unique.
In my case, it mirrors much of what my colleague Jeff just shared with you. That is the size of the school, the caliber of the faculty, the caliber of the student body, the location of the law school, this urban setting backed right up against the Wasatch Mountains on one side, and then the state capitol downtown, along with the legal offices that are there and the amenities that are part of Salt Lake City. It's a really unique location. As I mentioned, I'm involved with public lands, natural resource conservation issues. This is sort of right in the middle of the Rocky Mountain West, 4 hours to the north, and you're in the Yellowstone country. 3 to 4 hours to the south, you're in the Red Rock country of southern Utah, which is both good for recreation and mind clearing, if you will, but also, from my perspective, provides an opportunity to get engaged with the issues of the day. It's hard to beat that. One of the other things that brought me here, frankly, I'll embarrass him, but Dean Aguilar was a third-year law student when I was talking to the law school about moving down I-80 from the University of Wyoming to the University of Utah. And I had some reservations about this, but he and his colleagues in particular were persuasive that the student body provided some opportunities for me professionally and to enjoy the same sort of faculty-student relationship that I had previously enjoyed at the University of Wyoming. I probably should mention that I've also taught at 2 other law schools here in the United States, and neither of them compare to the University of Utah in terms of faculty-student relationships, ratio, and just general overall opportunities that are available here. I've also taught overseas, and I'm always happy to come home to Utah and Salt Lake City and the university.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this question is going to be a little bit of a combination of a couple questions that Jacob Dean has asked and then Sarah Crompton. So students are interested in knowing what are the job prospects to practice outside of Utah, and in particular, students are asking about interning in Washington, D.C., and then also if there are any opportunities internationally in terms of studying or job placement.
So I guess I can chime in first. Just so my institutional knowledge on these questions is not strong, but so I can just kind of speak from personal knowledge of my students. So I've had students clerk in Washington, D.C. For the Securities and Exchange Commission, so the regulator for the securities laws. We have an office right here in Salt Lake City, which is very unique for a city of our size, and we have internships. Students intern there regularly. Every semester we have students interning at the SEC here, but their main office is in DC. So last semester I had a student who interned there and had a great experience. So we certainly have opportunities to intern in DC. I haven't had students go internationally, but it's not like I've had students try who haven't been able to do it. I just haven't had students who've been interested in that. In terms of practicing outside Salt Lake, most of my students, I'd say probably the vast majority of my students end up practicing in Salt Lake, in downtown. There's a lot of corporate law work here. There's a lot of startups here that students end up working for. So they'll work in-house for startups, or they'll work for the big firms doing business litigation or transactions. But I definitely have had students go out of state. I have some students off the top of my head, I think one in Orange County, one in Los Angeles, one in New York. So I would say, the majority of our student body ends up practicing in Salt Lake, probably more than the majority of our student body, but it's just because people don't want to leave. People just love Salt Lake and want to stay here. But students who want to practice on the coast or in other cities, the opportunities are open to them. And I've had students have great success working out of state.
Yeah, I can add to that in terms of natural resource environmental law work and internships during your tenure as a student at the law school are available. I think I can even go so far as to say readily available with a little bit of initiative on your part in DC, but also elsewhere. And we have programs that support a semester here or there, along with the opportunity to work during the summer in DC and elsewhere. I'm recalling just a couple of years ago, a student was in Alaska working on natural resource issues there with an organization called Trustees for Alaska. We've had placed students during the summer and permanently in the Environmental Protection Agency Legal Counsel Office in Denver. We've placed students in the Interior Solicitors Honors Program back in Washington, D.C. And we've had no difficulty in placing students around the country, probably primarily in the West, with firms that are involved in natural resources type law, water law, and other natural resource issues. So I think the answer is that those opportunities are readily available.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to jump in and echo both what Professor Schwartz and Professor Kiter said, which is that the job opportunities outside of Utah are more plentiful than the students who want to take those job opportunities. So what we regularly run into is that students come to Salt Lake and then they decide they want to stay in Utah because they love Utah. And when I travel the country and speak to our alumni, so for example, our alumni in Los Angeles are really active. They would love for you all to come work with them in Los Angeles. But the reality is that even people who come here from California, they end up deciding that they want to stay in Utah. So yes, absolutely, there are jobs in DC. We have amazing alums doing amazing work in DC, on the Hill, in large firms, in the government, nonprofits. And so if you are one of those students who really wants to go out of state, wants to go to DC specifically, wants to go to international opportunities, we have those opportunities. It just doesn't necessarily show up in our job percentages because a lot of people decide that they love Utah and want to stay in Utah. Dean Aguilar?
I want to add two things to what you just said. The first is one of the benefits of going to school here includes being a part of a major flagship university. And we have a terrific political science and policy program called the Hinckley Institute. And we regularly have our own law students coordinate with the Hinckley Institute and receive scholarship support as well as placement support for summer internships in Washington, D.C. And it also helps them with some of their housing because they can piggyback on the Hinckley Institute housing arrangements that they have for students who spend the summer there. So it's just not the law school that you have as a resource to get you to where you want to be. The second thing I want to mention is what Dean Crump Warner has done right out of the chutes. She's expanded some of our programming to both support and encourage students who will be wanting to look for jobs out of state. And one of the things that we did before the arrival of the COVID, the response to COVID has been going to major urban centers where we have good populations of alumni and having luncheons and breakfasts with those alumni and asking the admitted students to join us so that they can both see that there's opportunities where they're coming from, whether it's they happen to be going to school there or if that's home, but also just as importantly, there's alumni who are willing to support and mentor them in their return back to their respective cities or states. And we're hoping to be able to capitalize that in the near future. So know that by coming to school here, your opportunities aren't just focused on Utah, but we're already making efforts to make sure you have kind of national and hopefully in the future global opportunities.
Great, thank you so much. So I know that Professor Schwartz has to leave us in a couple of minutes. So I've got one question here that I think is particularly suited to him. So we'll let him answer this question and then we'll probably say goodbye and a big thank you for participating. So this question comes from Whittington Kinley, who asks, as a student planning to obtain a joint JD MBA, what does the typical curriculum path look like? I've heard it's primarily first year all law courses, second year all business courses, third and fourth year electives. Is this correct? Professor Schwartz?
Well, I think you oversold me on my ability to answer this question, but that sounds right to me. I'm not sure if you have to do, if there's an order to it, but it's definitely right that you do 1 year in law school, 1 year in the business school. I'm not sure if you have to do one before the other. Don't quote me on this, but I feel like that's up to you. And then after that, you do electives in both schools. So that does sound correct to me. Your general.
Professor Schwartz is so brilliant.
I can probably give you better specifics. You're muted.
I was going to jump in and say that Professor Schwartz is so brilliant that even when he doesn't definitely know the right answer, he got the answer right. So
Okay.
generally, anytime you're doing a joint degree, we encourage you to start in the law school because the American Bar Association, who's our accreditor, does not allow you to get credit towards your JD until you have matriculated into the JD program. So yes, we usually say you should start in the JD program, do your first year in the JD program, and then take your classes in the other program just to make sure that you're getting joint credit where it is eligible. So Professor Schwartz is absolutely correct.
Close enough. Yeah, being a good guesser, it turns out, is very important to being a professor. Because, although we appear to know all the answers, sometimes, never mind, I won't go there. So
don't give away our secrets, Professor.
But yeah, so I have, it varies every year, but in terms of the program, I tend to have between like 1 to 4 students a year doing it. And I think it could be more students. I think it's a valuable program, and students who do it end up with great jobs afterwards. So some end up going in-house, some end up going to big law firms, but all the students I've talked to have had a good experience with the program and landed and done well with it. So if that's something you're considering, I would definitely encourage you to do it, and I'm happy to answer any. Hopefully you do a better job answering any other questions you have about it. And Dean Crump is right, I should probably sign off. But if you do have any other questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. You can email me or give me a call. So my name is Jeff Schwartz. So it's jeff.schwartz@law.utah.edu. So feel free to reach out with any questions, and I would be more than happy to talk more with you. So thank you very much for joining me, for allowing me to join you and speak with you today.
Thank you, Professor Schwartz. And for those of you who are surfers, Professor Schwartz is a surfer. And so you can go surfing with your business organizations professor.
Exactly. That was the biggest, in the con column, going back to your question of coming here, that was the biggest thing that the university had to overcome in recruiting me was there's no surf, unfortunately, in Utah. I've checked the Great Salt Lake, but it doesn't happen there. So definitely a drawback, but still worth coming here. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Professor Schwartz.
Thank you.
Okay, so we had Professor Kiter. We have several questions specific to environmental law. And so the first question we have here is from Alexa. And Alexa says, Professor Kiter mentioned some of the career options available to students interested in pursuing environmental law, such as the EPA and the Department of Interior. With regards to federal environmental law and policy careers, what kind of reputation does the University of Utah carry? How widely is the school recognized for its education research in the environmental field?
Well, the short answer, I think, is it enjoys a very strong reputation. That's reflected in the fact that for the last 5 years, at least in the U.S. News and World Report rankings, our environmental law program has, been among the top 10 programs in the country. That's out of about 120 different law schools. There are some other indicia of reputation where we've earned A ratings or A- ratings. Again, a reflection, I think, of the reputation of the institution. And as I mentioned, we've not had great difficulty in placing students in governmental positions, as long as we're not in a recession in the country. And even then, locally, we've had good luck in placing students in governmental positions. Also, good luck in placing students both in the private and the more general public sector. So, and the connections that the faculty have as a result of the diverse experiences, not only of myself, but my colleagues, mean that we've got contacts both locally, regionally, and nationally. I think I mentioned the Alaska summer placement that in part grew out of connections to Alaska, but those connections extend in other directions around the country.
So yes, We can help you get your environmental job. All right, next question comes from Kayla Mendez. So Kayla asked, the list of clinics offered on the website are limited to the Innocence Clinic, Justice Lab Clinic, and the Tax Clinic. What other experiential learning clinics are offered? How competitive is the application process? So I can get us started on this one, and then maybe Dean Aguilar and Professor Kiter can jump in on it. So just to start off, I just wanted to explain the difference between what a clinic is and what an externship is, because it's a technical difference that oftentimes matters to the American Bar Association, but doesn't always necessarily matter to students. So a clinic is an experiential opportunity representing clients where you are supervised by a faculty member. So Kayla is correct that those are the in-house clinics that we offer at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. And so what that means is that the work that you would be doing in that clinical placement would be supervised by a member of our faculty. So for example, the Justice Lab Clinic is supervised by Anna Carpenter, and the Innocence Clinic is supervised by Jency Anderson. However, we have numerous externship placements. And the difference between an externship placement and a clinical placement is who's supervising you. So in an externship clinic, you are supervised by a supervising attorney. Although we do have a member of faculty, Jackie Morrison, who oversees the entire externship program. So the externship program is incredibly robust. We have everybody from the U.S. Attorney's Office. I know somebody asked about that earlier. So we have students placed there. And yes, we do have alumni in the U.S. Attorney's Office. So there's great opportunities there for the person who asked that question. And then also all around the country. So Professor Kiter's given you great examples of the Alaska context. We have students in DC, we have students in California, you name it, they've had that externship experience. So we have really robust offerings, both in terms of clinical placements and externship placements. And Kayla asked specifically about experiential learning. The third category of experiential learning is simulations. So that means you're not necessarily representing a client, but you're actually getting the opportunity to practice that skill. And so we have numerous simulations as well. So for example, Randy Dreyer teaches a depositions class where you actually get the opportunity to practice both defending and taking a deposition. Amos Guerrera does a counterterrorism simulation where he was in the Israeli military, and he actually runs you through some real life simulations that he had and decisions he had to make when he was in the Israeli army. So there's a lot of good simulation opportunities as well, which would also count as experiential. Kayla asked, how competitive is the application process? We have more placements than we have students taking advantage of those placements. So it is not particularly competitive. I'm not aware of any of our experiential placements, either simulations, externships, or clinics that are at capacity or above capacity. So that means that to date, now of course this could change, but to date, anybody who has wanted to have one of those opportunities has been able to have one of those opportunities. And that again, I think is the advantage of us being a small community. Dean Aguilar, Professor Kiter, anything to add to that?
Go ahead, Reyes.
The thing I'd like to add is how the location of our law school really benefits the students in particular with experiential opportunities. Because Salt Lake is a state capital and it's a major metropolitan area, those placements in the externship program are unique to our students in that unless you're living in a place like what Salt Lake is, a state capital, a major metropolitan area, you'd have to leave for a term to take advantage of things like placements in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals for the U.S. court system, the U.S. District Court, the Disability Law Center, our clinical placements at both the federal and municipal and county level. There's a whole host of environmental placements. And then even on campus with our new ventures placement, which includes patent law and opportunities to help with commercialization of the inventions that are happening on campus. So because we're such a small school, but in a major metropolitan area, there are really no limits to what you can choose to do in this area.
The only thing that I would add, focusing specifically in the environmental arena, is that we have an environmental law clinic that is an externship that enables students to work with practicing lawyers from law firms who oversee their work, but the students then end up placed in any number of organizations ranging from the Attorney General's office for the state of Utah to the Interior Solicitor's office to nonprofit environmental organizations and even with private law firms who are doing pro bono work in the environmental field. So there's quite a wide array of potential placements with expert oversight from two of our graduates who are highly regarded environmental attorneys here in the community.
One thing I just want to add, and then I'm going to ask our last question that we haven't said yet today, is that we anticipated an economic downturn at the start of this academic year. We did not anticipate COVID-19. And so you should know that your class, we deliberately are trying to shrink your class. So we deliberately have admitted fewer students than we usually admit. And what that means is, even for those of you who are worried about the economy and what COVID-19 might mean for the economy and what it might mean for these opportunities, you should take some assurance that we were thinking of that, although of course not the virus specifically, but we were thinking about the economy in making decisions of how many offers to extend this year. And so we're hopeful that in deliberately reducing the size of our incoming class and making fewer offers, that even if we see a downturn in the economy, that will not negatively impact you, because we have deliberately tried to have a little bit of a different, smaller class size. So take some assurance, of course it's not a guarantee, but take some assurance that even if things should really go south with the economy, we feel confident that we will still be able to offer you this broad array of opportunities. Okay, so for the last question, this is a good last question for Professor Kiter. I'm going to kind of combine three questions, all related to environmental law. So one prospective student asks about environmental justice. Do we have those courses or programs? Also, where do the majority of our certificate recipients end up seeking jobs? Relatedly, somebody wants to know, what does the job market look in environmental policy in Montana, Wyoming, and the Rocky Mountain West? And the last question related to that, are there specific opportunities in energy regulation, and are there alumni working in that field? I can briefly answer, Luke, yes, there are, and we have an alumni who wants to hire you. He's very excited about people in energy law. But for the rest of those questions, I'll turn it over to Professor Kiter.
Well, if I can remember the full sequence of questions, in the energy arena, there are a number of law firms that work in that area. Governmental agencies are engaged in energy work. So there's plenty of opportunity there. Let's see, other parts of the question, opportunities in the region. We have placed students in Wyoming, Montana, Colorado over the years. So there are opportunities available there. What types of opportunities? Frankly, the whole array of opportunities that I've alluded to before, ranging from private law firm practice to in-house corporate counsel type positions to governmental work both at the federal and the state level. And with nonprofit organizations. In terms of how available are those positions, probably in the private sector in general, a little more available than in the public sector, which is a little more available than in the nonprofit sector. But nonetheless, we've had good fortune in getting students placed in all of those sectors, and some students have started in one and then moved around into another. I can't count on my two hands over recent years the number of students that have ended up here locally or regionally with jobs that they are quite happy with in those various sectors related to environmental and natural resources law. And as I mentioned earlier, the faculty contacts are quite extensive, both regionally and nationally, to help. And everyone is always available and willing to help So if you've got something specific that you're interested in, I think we can be of assistance in trying to see that you land where you want to land, doing what you want to do.
Great, thank you so much. So unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our time. This has been just a wonderful conversation. I've really appreciated your fantastic questions. I hope you all know that we really are looking forward to welcoming you in the fall. You are literally our future. We hope you become part of our community. If you have any other questions that we haven't had a chance to answer, please feel free to email any of us. You can find us all on the website. Also, I encourage you to email even people who haven't been on the panel today. I think you'll find that our faculty and our staff are really responsive. They're excited about you. They want to welcome you, and so they'll be happy to answer your questions. I hope that you're all safe, that you're all well, and we very much look forward to seeing you in the fall. So thank you so much, and see you in a couple months.